In the dark shadows and in the white cold, fearlessly we search for knowledge new and old. We drink the strong spirits and read the ancient tomes. The order of the Abracast, we are the brave and bold.
The Abracast, occult, history, conspiracy, and violence.
Welcome to the Abracast. This is, John. And on the show, we've looked at all types of magic. We've looked at Thelema, the Goetia, Kabbalah, Gnosticism, sex magic, alchemy, tarot. Basically, if you name it from the Western mystery traditions, we've at least talked about it a little bit on the show. So tonight, I thought we could do a little something different and a little bit more down to earth. So tonight we're going to put down the dusty tomes and we're going to leave the demons where they are for the evening. And we're going to learn about natural magic. And I have the head witch in charge of a podcast called Magick and Mediums. Anielle Reed is on the line with us. Hello.
Hello.
Hi. Thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm actually really excited. I don't get excited often, but I'm excited.
That's good. So before we get started, do you want to just kind of talk about your podcast a little bit and the kind of topics that you guys tackle over there?
Sure. So
and
on Magick and Me. Oh, yeah. So Magick and Mediums is on Spotify, iTunes, Google, actually Apple Podcasts, sorry. Pretty much anywhere where podcasts are. And the title pretty much sums it up. I started this podcast because I wanted to talk about different magical disciplines. And I wanted to create a podcast that was specifically made for people who identify as mediums and who were fine with the spelling of magic with a K. So it's really for people who identify as they know what the word witch is and they're not freaked out by it. They identify as psychics. They know the difference between different pagan groups. So that's my podcast.
Yeah, I love it. I'm a huge fan, by the way. So, okay. So what's kind of your background? Were you raised in a witchy environment, or did you have a more structured religious setting when you were growing up?
It's really interesting, and I think a lot of people who are not Anglo-Saxon in America have this sort of maybe background in which they know, maybe they go to church, but they still have it in their roots where they remember that their ancestry was not Christian or Catholic. And it's just, the covering up of what they really are. There's a big word for this. I just don't know what it's called. So yes, I did go to church. I went to Catholic school. I went to Christian summer camps. And I was always very spiritual. But for me, Jesus was literally my homie. And I remember there was a shirt that's Jesus is my homeboy. So that, yeah, that was my relationship with Christianity. My whole family, we knew about ghosts and spirits, and we would talk about, we knew that there were good spirits. We knew that there were demonic spirits. And I don't like to use the word demonic because then it's ooh, bad, but sort of more negative energies. And we knew about it, we acknowledged it, but we weren't obsessed about it. it was just something that we knew was there. But we didn't like, go all out for Halloween to be like, yeah, we know all about it. So it was there, but it wasn't like all in my face growing up.
Okay. Do you think that that kind of helped you find your way to magic?
That's a really good question. I think I didn't know really what magic was until I like moved out. Actually, I was at home, and I think my first introduction to magic was, of course, in the Catholic Church. People would go and light candles. So candle magic was a big thing that I didn't even know was magic. It was just something like, oh, let's light a candle for this person. But then when I moved out, I started realizing, oh, okay, this is called something else as well, or what I believe in my practices fall under magic. I think I was doing magic for a long time, but just didn't know the words until I started reading different books. And that was like around high school. I used to do like psychic exercises with my friends, and I had no idea that that's something that like, ooh, that's so witchy. Like we were just like, let me try to meet you in my dreams. Like I thought as kids, that's what every kid did, but apparently it's not.
So magic is a vast topic. What areas do you focus on in your personal life and your practice?
That's a really good question. I think right now I am actually opening myself up to not limit myself. Right now I am in particular focusing a lot on mantras, mudras, yoga, and studying different yogis. So I am looking into like Eastern magic. If I have to say, what am I focusing on? But if anything happens, I'm such an eclectic witch where I like pull out from anywhere, whatever I need. So yeah, I hope that answered that question.
So besides like the candle magic, like what's the early stuff that you started with then before you got eclectic, let's say?
So I think it started in terms of me noticing that I can now say, okay, that was magic, was of course the candle magic, and crystals was like where I really realized, okay, there's something there in terms of like changing my reality using different tools. And then it became tarot magic, and that was kind of leaving high school where it started to become more formal. But really in college was when it was like active, and afterwards then it was like the crystal grids and incorporating everything together. I do think that it's just so for me in high school and in college, it's just in the culture, in the kind of youthful culture, to like be into crystals and to be into what they say is fantasy, but you don't know that it's magic. So like there's so many girls who are like, have crystals in their bag, but they don't consider it as magic when it kind of is.
Yeah. So do you think that that's typical for people like you right now? Like, do you think that's like a natural progression?
I think it's a natural progression. Yeah, I mean, I talk to a lot of people who identify as psychics and mediums and are like in tune with the energies and astrology. And I think what's trending right now is people really waking up to their own gifts and moving away from tools. I think when you first get into it, you're just so excited and you just buy everything you can find from, whatever new age store is near you. But now I feel that everybody's like getting into, oh my gosh, I just found this new spiritual ability that I have. And that's the new magic. It's really just going deep within themselves and seeing these different quote unquote powers emerging.
That's interesting. So, okay, so how would you define natural magic?
I would define natural magic. So if I was to write a book, I would say something like, we all know when we think of natural magic and what we've heard about natural magic is that it's in nature, the crystals and the herbs, and sometimes we'll dive and say that it's also working with fairies and dryads and mermaids, and we can really expand natural magic to be whatever is in nature. But then I find that a lot of the time people exclude themselves. So my definition would be, also as an eclectic witch, would be to say that natural magic is really what's natural to you. I think from having my own podcast and heavily promoting it last year on Instagram, I noticed that there are just so many people coming out of the woodworks being like, well, if you're not from this discipline, by blood or by race, then you really shouldn't be practicing this particular magic. And I just found a lot of other people who weren't being represented, who are just like, it doesn't matter what you look like, where you come from, whatever magic comes naturally to you and comes to you, then that is natural magic.
Okay, so you just said a lot of stuff. That I think we need to pay attention to a little bit. So I'm guess that I'm not aware that there's like genetically elite witches. Like there's people out there that believe you have to have it by blood.
So I don't believe that, but you'll see. It's like once you put a podcast up, when somebody wants to express their opinion, they will find you. And that is what some of the opinions I received were, just from people that I think in every group there's going to be ego, even in the spiritual community. And I came across a lot of people who were, especially with Hoodoo, which I do not know a lot about Hoodoo, but people would be like, well, if you are not from New Orleans or you are not Black, then you are not practicing Hoodoo and you cannot practice Hoodoo. And don't try to come across as if you can practice Hoodoo. So that was new to me. Yeah. But there are people who do believe that if you are not, I don't know, from whatever group, then you can't practice a certain lineage. You can't, practice a certain magic.
That to me is astounding. Cause it's, all the witchy people I know are super inclusive. I would never think that there's a place for that kind of, it's like real life muggles and shit,
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely feel though crazy. That I've noticed only just from social media. I haven't noticed this in my real world. Actually, I have. Let me take that back. Certain groups, magical groups, are a bit, I guess, just not as inclusive. My own group has never been like that, but I did go to one event. I won't say the name of who it was. But when me and my friend went to this event, we definitely felt a little like people could look at us like we were different, even though we didn't look different. It was just a completely different energy. And a lot of the comments were very exclusionary. It was just very off, something that I was like, this is awkward.
That is weird. Yeah.
Yeah. But there definitely is some people who are like, well, this is my magic, and are just more closed with it. I know for myself, if there's somebody who doesn't believe in magic, I don't get off by telling them about magic. So, right. So I mean, some people I won't talk to about my magical workings, but if you are like, I'm a witch, I'm a psychic, then I'm open to anybody who says that.
Wow. Yeah. It seems like that's the way it should be, right? So.
Yeah, definitely.
So is there a difference between natural magic and Wicca?
Well, I don't identify as a Wiccan, and it's so funny because I feel that am subscribed to a lot of different publishers, and when they send you like new book alert, there's like a lot of Wicca 101 or like, beginner's witch. And there's always that section in those books that's like working with crystals, working with the sun and the moon. So I think it's one of those things where you can say, I'm a natural witch, but I'm not Wiccan. And you can say I'm a Wiccan and I'm a natural witch. It's little things. For me, I would say natural witch is someone who just works with elements in nature, whether that be astrology, plants, etc., beings in nature as well. I think that, and I don't know if other countries have adopted this, but for me, Wicca is the only quote pagan path that can be defined as a religion right now. So I think that would be the only difference. Like, there's no such thing that's like a quote unquote set rules for natural witches. But if you say you're a Wiccan, then there are certain things that define you.
Okay. So would that be like maybe not more formalized? Maybe that's not the way to put it, but is there like more of a reliance or more trappings of like ritual as far as Wiccan is concerned, as opposed to like a natural witch?
So I would say with every Wiccan that I've come across, I mean, there's the language of it, so mote it be, blessed be. And, a lot of the magic is so that it doesn't harm anyone. That's when I think of Wicca, that's kind of the main things that I think about is defining that group apart from others. And in terms of natural magic, you can work with plants to bless people, to harm people. There really isn't any like limitation, and there's no need for you to set up your spell in a certain way, because you could be working with the consciousness of the plant and come up with something that hasn't been written before.
Okay, so you're discovering it on your way, like communicating with nature itself, maybe.
Yeah. And of course there are Wiccans who do this, but I think if I had to say what's the main difference, that would be it.
Okay. So what sort of instruments or tools or supplies would be in a natural witch's toolbox?
Crystals, of course. Different, if you like feathers, little things that you find. I find that a lot of people in the spiritual community are like, if it falls along my path, some people are really like, I'm not going to take anything from the tree, but if a leaf falls in front of me, I'll pick it up.
Okay.
So leaves, feathers, crystals, pebbles, a lot of witches just have all of the elements represented on their altar. So different things from nature that represent the elements for them. Sand, shells. Some people work with different animal bones. Yeah, any of those things, I think.
Okay. That's interesting. My wife is witchy, and when she goes to West Virginia for like vacation, she comes home with like bottles of like river water that she collects there and stuff. So it's like laying all over the house, and we got like dog jawbones and stuff in the kitchen, and it's a wild trip over here.
Yes.
Yeah, so what kind of like what kind of spells would you, as a natural witch, what sort of experiments or spells would you do? I feel like that's too broad. So
I feel what I really like to do, some people will say, well, that's not really nature magic. They would just say that it's fairy magic. But I really like doing glamour spells working alongside the Fae. I just like doing magic with my guides. And so when I think of nature magic, I think of communicating with trees and fairy guides, and having them assist you with your magic is like the best thing you can do. Of course, you can, write out what you want and make crystal grids, which I think is an awesome natural magic to do. But I think if you can work with these guides from nature, that's going to really like step up your magical game.
And I'm sure there's various ways to like go to find, your guides or these fays.
Mm-hmm.
Like, is there like a method to do that, or many methods, or?
So for me, and I can only say like for me what it's been, I've always just in my life have been drawn to fairies and strongly believe that I was a fairy in another life, or sometimes in meditation can access that line of my multidimensionality. So I think for me, I could just say, oh, okay, just meditate and ask for that guide to come forward, and then it'll happen. But I don't know if that's going to be the case for someone else who might not feel that connection, etc.
They might not be. They might not be connected.
Yeah. So for me, my answer for everything when it comes to like, how can I do this with like magical workings is always to meditate. I just feel that that's like the best exercise, and that'll like open doors for you, because then you'll be able to see and hear, all of these messages from your guides through your psychic senses, that you might not be able to. For me, I see them, and not so much hearing, but yeah, it's during like a deep kind of meditative state, I'll see them. Or sometimes other people will like randomly lose things, and they're just like, oh, it's the house fairies like taking my stuff. But like people have their like little signals to where they know, okay, there's some like other energies happening right now. But for me, I would say for anybody who's looking into it, just put that intention out there, telepathically. There's a lot of different meditations you can do to kind of access the Fae world. Oh gosh, I can't think of a book that had like so many, but I mean, Google is our friend. So there's so many meditations and books out there. But I will say, of course, that some publishers are better than others. So look for a publisher that has like other real deal occult books, not just one that's like, it's obvious what books are just trying to catch in on the trend. So like Wiser Books, and there's so many like small kind of real occult publishers that give out some really good information on how to access the Fae and how to know you're talking to them, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, my rule of thumb is go back in time. Get like the oldest book you can find that deals with the subject, and that's where you should start. Because it's so hard to, like what you were just saying, it's so hard to find good information, with these new books, because you don't know where these people are getting these things from.
Yeah. And I think they're like also trying to cater to everyone. So they take things out, they dumb it down, and then that just changes everything.
Yeah. So for like this natural magic, I'm picking up already kind of, but is there like a set like procedures? Like, is there a book written that tells you how to do these things, or is it, you working with your guides nature to kind of figure them out?
I mean, it all depends on you. I would say for someone who is absolutely new to any sort of magic, there's all these like the beginner witch books, and they'll all say, well, they actually won't say this, but I will say that whenever you're working with different tools, that you have to respect your tools. I was never the person who kind of, and like I see this in a lot of books where they just are like, I need a love spell, so I'm just going to call on Aphrodite. I never talked to her before, but she's an ingredient in this spell, so let's summon her. Like, I kind of feel that when you are working with anything, whether it be crystals or your wooden wands, that you have respect for every tool, and you know, show gratitude to those tools because there's an energy to them. And you, as a beginner, you might not be able to feel that yet, but I think that that's really key in all of the magic that you do, is to have respect for your tools and have respect for the spirit world. And also know that just because you ask for a very specific thing, it doesn't mean that you're going to get it. And if you do the spell right and you don't get it, it doesn't mean that you're a failure magically. So I would say, yeah, I would say that the steps are really to go into magic with respect for yourself, respect for magic itself and the spirit world itself, and to have patience. And again, to just always be meditating and just trying to work on yourself. Magic isn't just this like, put it in the microwave, you do it one day, and then you're Harry Potter the next day. Like, you know, so it's a lifestyle.
Okay, so this is the question that I've been dying to ask you. Is there a black magic facet to natural magic?
Yeah, I mean, when we talk just natural in itself, and what we see in nature, you know, there's sicknesses, there's disease, to break it down, and there's poisons, but then there's also, you know, medicines and blessings and amazing things in nature itself. So there is that balance. So I believe that with magic, it's really the manipulation of energy, and what makes black magic and white magic and whatever, gray magic, whatever you want to call it, different is just the intention behind it. So if you wanted to hurt someone with a rose, you could. But if you wanted to show someone with a rose how much you love them, you could. So I would say, of course, it's all about the intention. There's so many types of crystals. You could use black crystals to protect yourself and to elevate yourself so that you feel kind of the highest love. Or you could use black crystals to kind of spy on someone or do some darker magic if you wanted to.
Okay, that the thing about the rose though, that's brilliant. You're brilliant.
Thanks.
So, in like for natural, is there ramifications for using black magic? I know, like in Wicca, a lot, like they go out of their way to try not to harm anything with their stuff. Is there like a check and balance in the world of a natural magician?
So this all depends on your consciousness. So there are some people who really believe in karma, and in their, I'll have to use the word, in their level of development, there is karma. And then there's other magicians who don't believe in karma, and for them, they have never experienced any negative ramifications of any of the work that they've done. So I think it depends on consciousness, perspective, and to throw it all on another loop, there's other people who just believe that there's so many different timelines where, yeah, maybe there is negative ramifications, but, you know, the timeline I'm on now, that doesn't exist. But maybe if I, you know, lower my vibrations, then I will experience the negative ramifications of what I've just done. So to answer that, I personally believe that it's all in the magician. I mean, magic in itself is also changing your own perspective too, because perspective does change how things operate and act. So if you want to believe that, you catching your bus and everything working out for you and you winning $1,000,000 is the worst thing that could happen to you, then yeah, that's karma and it happened to you. But if you believe, like it's the best thing, then it's the best thing. So
Yeah.
I think it's all perspective.
I think that's an interesting way to look at it. And some people, like, I could see them. I know these people in my daily life that are just so unaware of their self. They don't link, like something shitty that they did to like something bad that's happening to them. Like they're just blissfully unaware of their their consciousness. It's crazy.
I know.
But,
and I think, go ahead.
I just said that I think that's a real good point. It's a good perspective to have.
I think as magicians, that's really what we're doing, is just becoming aware. There was this quote that was like, what you call magic is just what I call science that you just don't understand. Something along those lines. And I really feel that doing magic is such an honor because you just have a different perspective because you know things that maybe other muggles don't. Not saying that we're better, but it's just an expanded awareness where we're aware of how our thoughts affect other things. Whereas, like you said, you have some friends who just aren't aware of, the consequence of their thinking. So.
Okay. So, are there any sorts of like myths or a stigma associated with this sort of thing, with this natural magician stuff?
I think media always is like trying to show like the natural magician as like this New Orleans sort of witch doctor who has like a bag of bones and like has the skull face, and it's not like a festival and is this dark, sort of magician, which is not the case. I think it's just the scandalized thing for people who aren't afraid to really go down into the dirt and work with nature. I also think that there's a myth that people who do magic are incredibly selfish and that we're only doing magic to advance, our every whim, which also is not the case. And I think that when people think of just nature magic, they think that we're just always like sacrificing chickens, which also is not the case. Yeah. So, I think there's just so many different myths that I think are just as a result of the whole, like, trying to spread Christianity, and also some people trying to spread fear, that are still some people believe in that.
Yeah, I think when I think of like a stereotypical like natural witch or natural magician, I think of like the crone, like living in a hovel in the woods somewhere, mixing up her herbs for potions and all that kind of stuff.
And what I love about this age is that that's no longer the case. Like, I love it so much that, at least in certain parts in the West, like in cities like New York and California, that people are like, yeah, witches can be hot. Like, it's not this old woman. Like, there's so many beautiful people that are witches and people who are not. I think another myth that I absolutely hate is that people think that if you identify as a witch, that you're just automatically stupid. They're like, dragons aren't real. None of this stuff is real. They don't exist. And you're just in some fantasy world. So people are starting to realize, like, we're not dumb. I think science is catching up as well to what we've always known. So
yeah, so it like I heard you heard you talk on your show about this Sephora business.
Oh, yeah.
And I think you're kind of talking to that now. Do you want to kind of explain what's going on with that?
Well,
for my folks?
Yeah, no problem. For me, and this, so this was one of my most popular episodes because so many people, I guess, were so enraged by it. And I got a lot of, well, not a lot, but I got some negative emails from people saying that they couldn't really believe that I wasn't upset by it. So my opinion is a little different from what others might have, but overall, Sephora was going to release, and it was not Sephora, it was another brand, I forgot the name, was going to release around Halloween a witch kit, which had like it had a tarot card like as the cover, it had like rose quartz, some different perfumes, and I think that was it. And just some people were just like, I can't believe that you are, they used all sorts of like language now, what's trending, like cultural appropriation and
right.
whatever other words that like, I don't know, liberal people say was not insulting, but like it was that typical like argument, like, oh, stealing and this is so wrong and responsibility of a company. And we're going to boycott Sephora. So in the end, the company actually was, the product never made it to the shelves. And it's so funny to me. I mean, it's kind of sad, but some people were like, and you're not even thinking about Native Americans because it had white sage in it. And some people are, yeah. So they were like, white sage, because somebody was saying, only if you're native should you be using white sage, and saying that like it's endangered. I don't know. So it turns out that she was actually working with this Native American tribe. They were going to get, I don't know, maybe like 30% of the profits. They already had a big deal. And then, you know, the witches kind of ruined that for them. And some people were like, oh, I wish I knew that earlier before I like made a video. Yeah. So,
yeah. Well, I think I see it from your perspective, where it's kind of like a, hey, you know, it might be cultural appropriation, whatever you know, big corporate, you know, taking your identity and all this stuff. There might be a little bit of that, but at the same time, it's also kind of like, hey, we're here, you know, like, yeah, we're finally getting, you know, we're big enough that people are fucking marketing to us, you know, like, yeah. I think it's a powerful thing.
Exactly.
It's kind of like mainstreaming it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think was super interesting. So I know this is it's a huge, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was kind of apologizing because I know this is kind of a big question, but how has magic changed your life?
I think it's so interesting that you say like your life, because I'm very aware of like the many deaths that I've had. And I actually had a reading with someone like a week ago, and she was like, you are not the same person that you were 3 years ago. And I was like, yes, you are correct. So at the core, I've always been like a person who's interested in the occult and just energy itself, and had like, I guess, I never felt at home. And that's something that they always say, if you're a starseed, or if you're like, I don't know, a magical person, you'll never feel at home. So I always like, you know, whenever you watch those like 10, how to tell you're a witch, 10 things. Like I always had like all of them, you know, like, yes. So I think I was always magical my whole life, but I think every time that I do any sort of spell, or even now with Kundalini yoga, any sort of Kriya, I just feel like, oh my God, my whole life just changed. I went into a whole other timeline. Like this changed the game. Like I'm always feeling like, yeah, every day I'm learning some new magical thing that just like totally just like changes my world. So every day. something, I read something from someone, or even someone just says something that's so from spirit, that's like, so like, there's no way you were that smart to say that. Like, that's your higher self talking. Like, you know.
That's interesting. That's funny.
So it's every day. I'm always just like amazed and changed, because I think sometimes it's easy. If you don't meditate, if you don't have like a magical practice, or, you know, you're just in the slumps one day, to forget about real magic, like the peace that it gives, and just like real magic in itself. So I think it's just so nice to every day have something that reminds you of magic. And for me, whenever that happens, it just totally just like changes everything for me.
Yeah, I mean, that's a wonderful way to go through life, is being constantly surprised and learning stuff. I think, you know, that's also interesting, because what you're kind of saying is like the way to alleviate that, or what you might be, you know, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but what you might be saying is, you know, in order to get out of like that slump or that funk or whatever you call it, like, you know, introducing yourself into these wild, you know, these radical situations and opening yourself up to these possibilities is sort of a way to fill in that breach, you know, that someone might.
Exactly. I would go so far as to expand my definition of natural magic as to say that it's our birthright to practice magic, because for me, that's the most human I think you can feel, or that I felt, is acknowledging magic, the energy that's around us, and using it and engaging with it. So yeah, I think it's like everything, but magic is a big part, I think, of what makes us human and what makes the world go round to a degree.
Well, I think we're living in a wonderful time where people are paying attention to podcasts like ours. You know, we're out there talking about these kind of things. I think that there's a revival, you know, I think it's been happening since the late 60s, early 70s, you know, with the New Agers and all this stuff. I think it's, you know, I mean, it's coming. It's on its way, I think.
Yeah. 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 Just the fact, like you said, that we can have this and there's listeners, and it's not, you know, us being boycotted or people being like, oh, this is just some fantasy, he's off his rocker sort of thing, is just a big testament to where we are.
I think so too. We're in the middle on my show. We're in the middle of a hugely gigantic. I didn't think it was going to wind up being this big, but we're in the middle of a tarot card series. I'm doing like one show every month, and it seems on for like a year now already. And I know that you have an oracle deck, and I'm curious to know the different card in an oracle deck. I was wondering if you could shed some light on that.
What I love mainly about oracle cards is that the main difference is that it doesn't need to follow the rules that the tarot does. So, I mean, right now there's the major cards that are coming out follow the Rider-Waite-Smith system. And so you have the set number of cards, you have the set number of suites, the set amount of people, the queens, the kings, the page, the knight. And that's what it's going to be. Of course, you could change the art. So if you wanted to be like, it's going to be Witches of 1920s tarot,
right?
You can have that. Yeah, but they all have to display the same sort of symbols, the same sort of energy, versus an oracle. And of course, you can use the tarot to tell the future, look more into yourself. You can use it in whatever magic you want. I like to actually just put a card out if I want to invite that energy into my life. It can be really crazy. When I was actually working with my oracle deck, I was like, this is getting too intense, because I would meditate on one card or just have it out while I was writing it. And so I had a taboo card, I had a protection card, a persuasion card, where it was like darker energies, and I would like watch it play in my life, and I'm like, oh my God, I can't wait to finish this because it's getting too crazy. But they really, yeah, they're more than just a game. Like, they are magical tools, more so than what people will tell you as it just being like divination, fortune telling. I believe, well, with my deck, I advertised it as being a portal to different energies, and that's what, tarot decks and oracle cards can be. But the main difference between tarot and oracle is just that the tarot will most likely have more cards in the 70s. Oracle cards that I see now are usually like 33 or 44. And they just can cover whatever they want, have any sort of rules. And each card with tarot and oracle just represents and contains a specific energetic frequency. So from the numbering in the tarot, like if you get 5 and whatever else, it relates to the tree of life with the Rider-Waite Smith system. Each like art represents something else. If we want to talk about the pentacles, or if we want to talk about the Ace of Cups, how it took things from the Bible and from Kabbalah and all this stuff. So both of them take things from other disciplines. They go deep into your soul and talk to you on a very deep level and invite some really deep energies into your life. To sum it
up. So before we roll, would you do me a favor and please can find your podcast and your website and all of that?
Yeah, so you guys can find me on Magick and Mediums, where Magick is spelled correctly. That's right, Magick, and mediums.com. And the podcast is the same name, and it's pretty much everywhere.
And your Instagram is fantastic, so you can find her on Instagram. Yeah. I was watching you
Magick and Mediums.
I was watching you do readings last night, I think, on there. So that was pretty
interesting.
Oh,
yes. I do live readings. I try to do it every Monday. Yes, you're correct. I do live psychic medium readings on Instagram.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me this evening and shedding a little bit of light on this stuff that, I never get to talk about. You're so knowledgeable and your podcast is so engaging and everything. So I'm really honored.
Thank you. I'm excited to be on your show, and this has been a lot of fun.
Yeah. All right. So, I will talk to you guys later. I'll put a little bumper thing on the end here, and that'll be it. Thank you. Bye.